Hopefully you've not gotten tired of hearing about all of the summer hymn suggestions. It truly has been a delight for us to see and use these hymns, some of which we don't use very often, knowing that they were coming from the congregation's wishes. So this Sunday, Labor Day weekend, kind of the end of summer symbolically, we're going to do a little bit of a blowout and do 3 last summer hymn suggestions. And I think we have done at least one of every submission that has been given to us, at least one from each person that submitted some hymns. So we have some hymns that are a lot of fun. We're going to be singing Open Your Ears, O Faithful People at the sequence, and we'll be singing Amazing Grace at the communion. To begin the service, though, we'll be starting off with A Mighty Fortress is Our God. And this really ought to be a hymn that is more in our active repertoire. Of course, this is one of the Reformation's most significant hymns, one of the most significant poems that Martin Luther wrote. He also wrote the tune that goes along with it, Ein feste Burg, a mighty fortress. And it's sort of his take or his versification of verses from Psalm 46. And of course, we'll be singing this in the traditional manner, but it might be interesting before we get started for you to turn back a page. Instead of looking at 688, which is what we'll be singing, turn the hymnal back to 687, and you can see the original rhythm that Martin Luther wrote, exactly how the timing goes. And it's especially interesting if you look at that rhythm during the opening voluntary, which is a setting of this tune, A Mighty Fortress is Our God, by the 20th century German composer Helmut Walsche. And Helmut Walsche uses this rhythm, not the more traditional rhythm that we're used to. It wasn't until about 100 years or a little bit more later that Johann Sebastian Bach got his iron out and put the tune on the ironing board and then smoothed out that rhythm to what we're more familiar with. A little bit easier to sing, I think you'll find, but it's also interesting to know that much more lively sort of peasant dance that Martin Luther originally conceived of. And then again, because it is Labor Day weekend, we will, of course, end the service as we do every year with another tune that is rich in our repertoire, Come Labor On. This is a text that was written in the very beginning of the second half of the 19th century, a Christian hymn for laborers. And then it started to grow in some popularity as a poem. And the folks that were putting together the hymnal 1916 that preceded the hymnal 1940 that some of us grew up with, the hymnal 1916, they wanted to have this text be a part of it, but it's a very strange rhythmic pattern in the way the words are laid out. So there was no pre-existing melody that would fit the words. So they approached T. Tertius Noble to write this tune. T. Tertius Noble started off his career as an organist in Ely Cathedral, and then spent many years as the organist and director of choirs at York Minster Cathedral, one of the most important cathedrals in England, before he was then recruited to come across the pond, and he was the person who started the men and boys choir of St. Thomas Fifth Avenue in New York City. So T. Tertius Noble has a very important place in our tradition, both in England as well as finishing his career here in America, in New York City. And he wrote this tune very much in that style of Stanford, Charles Villiers Stanford, or C. Hubert H. Parry. It's this broad English unison tune with a very rich harmonic landscape. And then you'll notice that just as an organ setting of A Mighty Fortress is Our God begins the service before we sing that tune, After we sing this tune, the postlude is also a setting of this tune, a postlude on Ora Labora, Come Labor On, by one of T. Tertius Noble's successors at the job at St. Thomas Fifth Avenue, Jerry Hancock. So I hope as you spend your Labor Day weekend, you will spend some time laboring and rejoicing and praying with us here at St. John's Cathedral.